And that game had everything for you, man. It had 9 rushing touchdowns, which we haven't seen since 1922 in a football game.
Think
about
the teams in 1922, do you know?
Who the hell knows? But I
love to hear those teams.
I saw where it was
the scallywags versus the cigarettes or something.
9 rushing touchdowns, and quite frankly, it was your typical AFC North type of game. Normally, those games are low scoring; they're more defensive oriented. But both quarterbacks just played amazing football, and it just goes to show you when Lamar Jackson is healthy, just how hard he is to defend. Like, if you run man coverage against him, he's going to run with the ball. If you run zone coverage with him and you can't sack him, he's going to run around and he's going to find guys down the field. Baker Mayfield, the last 2 games, he's played his best football as a professional. And they're going to be okay. They're going to be interesting to watch as I believe they're going to make it to the playoffs. Now, they play the Giants next week, and that's a Sunday night game.
Yep.
Now, the question is...
Hangover spot?
Right. What
letdown spot?
What are the Browns going to look like, when they get here? And quite frankly, it's probably a good day for the Indianapolis Colts because Cleveland now falls to 9-4, but Indianapolis has lost to both Baltimore and Cleveland. It's one of the reasons why Cleveland now finds themselves in the 5th spot and Indianapolis in the 6th spot. Cleveland, look, they have an easy schedule, man. They should get to at least 11 wins if they just take care of business and beat like the Giants and teams that they're supposed to beat. Their last game of the year will be against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Sure.
And again, it's, for the Cleveland Browns and for Kevin Stefanski in that division, they just got swept by the Baltimore Ravens. That cannot happen.
Well, that's sort of my take with this. Yeah. I heard so much already this morning on this game that was irritating to me because there was lots of pats on the back to the Browns like, oh, Baker Mayfield consistent 2 weeks in a row. He looks really good. The Cleveland Browns go toe-to-toe with the Ravens. You lost a home game to a team that's been reeling for most of the year, that was having all sorts of adversity in the game. Lamar Jackson has to leave. He says cramps. Twitter says it has something to do with his bowel movements. You got Trace McSorley out there. He tears his knee up, which is a horrible thing to see. You got him 4th down. You're winning the game. You need a 55-yard field goal from Justin Tucker to lose the game for the Browns. That ends up happening. So, to me, this was not a good night for the Cleveland Browns.
It's a really disappointing night.
Horrible loss.
It was a great game for us watching it,
right?
But it was a bad loss.
This wasn't a consolation prize for the Browns.
All I could think of when I watched Justin Tucker, so I just think of the Vikings. Could you imagine if the Vikings had Justin Tucker? How good they would be.
Yeah, at one point I said, imagine if the Vikings had Dan Bailey when he was the most accurate kicker in NFL history. Statistically, they did get Dan Bailey, and all of a sudden he decided to show up to a game mentally drunk.
I have to think about it, though. 55 yards, on a Monday night in Cleveland.
For the game, for the win.
Right. The guy has money. The guy has unbelievable money.
And he's an opera singer on top of it.
Right. It just goes to show you how important it is. But I don't know. Lamar, he showed me something last night because when he came back out and on 4th and 5 throws a touchdown pass.
Well, the way he threw it, too. So that was classic him. So he rolls out to his right. You don't know what he's going to do. He looks eyes down the field, sees Hollywood Brown squirt loose, bang, hits him accurately, touchdown. That's Lamar Jackson MVP, Lamar Jackson right there.
Exactly.
On a 4th and 5 where it feels like you can't stop him. Like there were times last year you felt like you couldn't stop the guy because he was throwing the ball well, he was running around, and last night was one of those times, especially on that play. You're like, what the hell do we do in this situation? Somehow he's going to find a way to get the right thing done for his team.
Well, the thing about it is back-to-back games now where he has played and flashed his MVP style from last year. Remember, he's also coming off of COVID-19, so whatever COVID fog or any of that stuff, none of that stuff seems to be residual, doesn't seem to be sticking with him. Maybe he had cramps, maybe he had a bowel movement. At one point in time, I think at the end of the first half, he had like 4 completions, and they had 21 points. He was crazy. And a lot of that is due in large part to his escapability. Hey, I thought the Browns battled them up, or bottled them up for the most part. Not bad. They were on him early in this game. But then he just kept fighting through it. Then when he leaves, you're like, all right, there's no way the Ravens are going to win.
Yeah.
And then he comes back out, and he does that on 4th and 5, which was really it's an amazing play. And I think when the Cleveland defense gets together and they look at these films, they're going to be like, geez,
it's got to be.
You can't drop coverage. You can't lose guys in your zones. And they'll have to work on that. And the one thing about what Cleveland will be facing this coming week will be an immobile quarterback, no matter who's playing.
It's either going to be Daniel Jones, who's hampered by a hamstring, or Colt McCoy, who can't move when he's healthy. One of the two. And the Browns will probably still make the playoffs, as you mentioned. But, I mean, this game meant more than just 2020 playoffs for the Browns.
To them, yeah, of course it did.
Especially having it at home, battling the entire game, coming back, taking a lead late. I mean, that spectacular acrobatic touchdown to take the lead. I mean, all of the things that had gone into this game and what it meant to them, for the franchise, for the fan base, and to lose it in that way. I mean, I could make a case that that's going to knock them down a peg, and then this Giant game on a short week against a team that just got their asses handed to them in the New York Giants, that's going to be a tough matchup for them.
They're going to have to rededicate and refocus themselves. You know, the interesting thing, the Browns come back-to-back weeks to MetLife. So they have the Giants and then the Jets.
Yeah.
And then they end up with the Pittsburgh Steelers at home. So, I mean, they're going to get to 11. I believe they'll get to 11 wins.
Which is a great season for them.
Right. And I don't know where the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be when they get there. I don't know if they'll have had, their spot in the playoffs locked up, or they'll have to win the game in order to stay in the number 2 spot. You never know. So there could be something to be said about them actually getting to 12 wins. They could get 12 wins if Pittsburgh doesn't have to play anybody. If they have locked up their playoff spot in the last week of the season, there you have it. So the Browns could get to 12 wins. I don't see how they don't get to 11 wins. So they're going to be a playoff team. They are definitely going to be a playoff team, and they're going to have to go on the road somewhere to one of these teams. So if they are right now, if they stay where they are in the 5th spot, then they're going to end up playing the number 4 seed. And, that will be a hell of a game. That's going to be
There's a lot of football left, though, Boomer. A lot of football left,
sure
as they say. A lot of permutations and scenarios that we could go through, and we're not going to know exactly who is playing who at this point. But the Browns fan is in, the perfect fan world right now. I always say this. When you're a team that hasn't done a lot the last couple of years, when you are generally the butt of most jokes in the NFL, and you have a season like this where it's better than it's been, a whole lot better than it's been. The expectations were still kind of low coming into the season. You lose a guy to injury in Odell Beckham Jr. People thought that was going to hurt. It has not hurt. It seems to have helped. And you make it to the playoffs for the first time in a very long time. Right. The rest of it's gravy. Now, next year, all the expectations are going to be on them, and then people are going to be screaming and yelling if they don't do it again and do it better. But this particular year, for the Browns and their fans, is like the greatest thing in the world, because making it to the playoffs, having double-digit wins, is almost to that franchise like winning a championship.
Yeah, true. And the thing is that if the playoffs started today, remember there are 7 teams now in each conference, and only one team gets the bye. Kansas City would get the bye. You would then have Cleveland playing Tennessee in the first round, which would be unbelievable. You'd have Buffalo playing Indianapolis, and you'd have Miami at Pittsburgh.
Wow.
I mean, that's I don't know. You ask me, that's pretty good stuff.
That's good football. You're excited for that.
That would be if it stays this way, unless somehow the Ravens or the Vegas Raiders sneak in. I doubt the Patriots are going to sneak in.
Well, the Ravens' schedule is pretty favorable too, right?
Right. So there could be an 11-win team not make it.
Wow.
Think about that. And that's why.
With an extra wild card,
I would tell you, though, if Cleveland and Baltimore both get to 11 wins and Indianapolis has 11 wins, I think Indianapolis, well, it all depends on what Miami's doing.
Yeah, there's a lot, like I said, a lot of football left. It's tough. You have no idea how this is going to play out.
I think you're going to have to get to 11 wins in order to make it into the playoffs in the AFC. I really do.
Well, that's the case, normally would be a lock, right? Yeah, 11 wins.
Vegas is not going to make it because they only have 7 wins right now.
They're not consistent enough. I mean, there's weeks that they look like world beaters. Obviously, they handed the Kansas City Chiefs their only loss, and then they have a game like they had last week where, off a game that they should have lost to the Jets, they basically get pounded by Indianapolis. So
like the Colts have the Texans this week at home. And look, I mean, Deshaun Watson can go out there and beat anybody. Now, they almost lost to the Texans a couple of weeks ago when Deshaun Watson fumbled the ball inside the 5-yard line on a snap. They're at the Steelers, Colts are, and then they have the Jaguars. the team that they lost to in week 1 that is coming back to haunt them.
Well, and by the way, the Jaguars, and I thought that the Jaguars going to Mike Glennon would help the Jets. Clearly it did not, even though they were competitive in a couple of games, lost an overtime game to the Vikings. But now they're going with Gardner Minshew. And Gardner Minshew is a guy, not that I would ever doubt that Jake Luton and Mike Glennon, they want to win too. But Gardner Minshew, we've seen before. I mean, the guy is just he's a bulldog out there. He just won't stop. And he's won some games. He's lost a bunch, but he's won some games. So maybe with Gardner Minshew in there for the Baltimore Ravens, that's who they're playing, for the Jacksonville Jaguars against the Ravens on their short week or whatever. Maybe they knock somebody off, and that helps the Jets out just in case the Jets win a game, which I don't believe that they will, but just in case. So you just have to keep an eye on the Jaguars, unfortunately. We talk so much about Trevor Lawrence and the next head coach and where the Jets are going. If they somehow didn't get that number 1 overall pick, that would just be, you want to talk about rock bottom, worst case scenario. I don't even know what the hell the Jets would end up doing. I mean, they'd probably have to keep Sam Darnold at that point.
Unless they want Justin Fields or they want the kid out of North Dakota State, I should say. So, they all still have to evaluate all these players. The problem with the kid at North Dakota State, he didn't play one game, I think.
He played one game.
One game, right, yeah.
And how'd he do in that one game, Eddie?
He did okay. Not great, but okay.
Okay. That's not going to be good for his draft stock, I wouldn't imagine.
Yeah.
An okay one-game 2020 season? Probably not. But, yeah, so keep an eye on the Jaguars and Gardner Minshew. I do think that meant something. I think that, both conferences have exciting potential for the playoffs with this new 1-bye, 7-team extra wild card thing. But I still feel like it's sort of the Chiefs and everybody else in the AFC. Where the NFC, I feel like, is totally wide open. I felt like that for over a month, 6 weeks, whatever it's been. But especially with the Steelers falling.
I think the Bills,
they're not beating the Chiefs in the playoffs.
Okay.
They're not.
All right.
You know that.
Yeah, Josh Allen is getting better each and every week.
I'm not saying he's not. It's just a different level of football. It just is. And I know that the Chiefs have had, like, a couple of moments where you're like,
they've had a couple of bumps in the road here.
They have, and they lost that game pretty badly to Vegas, and they barely got by the Panthers. I understand. I mean, even last week got dicier than it should have been. But quite frankly, at times I think they're bored. Like this regular season, it's like enough of this.
Patrick Mahomes is just too easy for him.
Yeah.
It's like, let's give the other team a handicap. Right. We'll give you 8 shots, and we'll play you, after we give you those 8 shots, and let's go.
Right, 100%. That's what it feels
kind of
like.
feels that way. And by the way, I don't know if you heard it. I listened to pretty much all of it. I thought Jared Porter, the new GM of the Mets, was great yesterday.
Oh,
I thought
yeah.
he said all the right things, man.
Good first impression, huh?
For me, it was. I mean, I saw the hockey player in him. I just saw the guy that is going to be focused in on not just making the splash hires, which hopefully he will do a few of, but I feel like Sandy Alderson is trying to recreate the Dodgers and the way the Dodgers do business. And to me, that's the model, the Dodger model,
right?
That you want to try to recreate here in New York. And that's your front office people. That is your scouting department. That is your international signing pool players. It's everything. It's not just the splash hires or the free agent acquisitions, which hopefully he'll go out and do a few more. But, and again, I still say, man, you can have DJ LeMahieu. You just got to play it right and get him. I still believe that he makes your team so much better. Could you imagine McCann, LeMahieu, and Springer?
That'd be a great offseason. It would.
I mean, your defense would be vastly improved.
I haven't heard.
Vastly improved.
I mean, outside of you, I really haven't heard as much interest with the Mets and DJ LeMahieu. That's the problem.
I just don't know why not.
Maybe it's secret in the shadows or whatever.
Better, man. I'm telling you.
And if you want to hear the Carton and Roberts interview, you can go to radio.com, check out their podcast for the new Mets GM.
Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit the red bell so you're notified when we have new content.